Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Weekly Armchair Sports Talk podcast. This United show. This is Devil's Advocate. We actually haven't had a pod, like a panel pod, in Jesus Christ, in quite some time. It's been a while, so it's great to be back. Great to be back on. Joined by Julio and Jonathan this evening. Was due to have Mark on, but he's after pulling out last minute. So look, nothing you can do there. We're going to soldier on anyway. First of all, lads, haven't seen both of you in ages. What's the crack? What's going on?
Yeah, I haven't seen you, Keane, since the Brighton game, the FA Cup semi-final. So it has been a while, yeah.
Yeah, it's been ages, man. It's been absolutely crazy. And Julio, how are you? How's life?
Smashing, mate. We actually signed a player in June. So as you can imagine, I am delighted.
Well, technically, not unless it gets announced tomorrow. I'd say it'll probably be July 1st when we officially announce it. But look, going by Ornstein, Romano, all the top guns, it's done anyway. So look, that's a good thing. But look, first, Julio, come to you first anyway. Look, obviously, we've been crying out for a transfer in the last couple of weeks. I think, look, everyone's getting a bit frustrated seeing Liverpool get McAllister, Havertz going to Arsenal, Maddison going to Spurs. Obviously, Mason Mount's been linked probably since last 5 or 6 weeks. What do you make, first of all, of the signing? And, is it kind of a relief to get one over the line, I suppose, early-ish into the window? And I suppose, how excited are you by the signing, if you are excited?
Yeah, I think, firstly, it's good to have the older band back together with you three. It's been quite often that we're on together. What I will say is that for a little while, it looked like the club was being very long-winded in saying we're signing no one this summer, so don't get your hopes up just yet. But I think it's good that we've got one almost over the line. The club haven't officially announced it yet. Who knows how long that will take. But it's good to have one over the line almost in time for pre-season. Because as we've heard constant reports that Ten Hag wants his players in the business done early. And given the control we're hearing about Ten Hag in terms of recruitment of players, in identifying them, yet again, we're seeing another classic case of someone linked to Dutch football or Eredivisie in some way. Obviously, we know that Mount spent the season in Vitesse and like a lot of Chelsea youngsters, and Ten Hag actually wanted him during the time he was at Ajax. I wasn't too chuffed we were going in for Mason Mount originally because I think a lot of us were expecting a Frenkie de Jong type of box-to-box midfielder coming in next to Bruno Fernandes. But given the fact that we've seen a lot of versatility with Fernandes in different roles, it will be interesting to see how this plays out, because this gives us, I think, a bit of tactical fluidity in that midfield. Because what Mount offers off the ball is actually quite interesting, because even though on the ball he's a little bit different to Eriksen, off the ball he offers legs, he offers grit, he offers intensity and pressing, which is very good which is something we need. And there's an element to Mason Mount's game where you think that in certain games we can have Mount and Bruno together ahead of Casemiro. And I think that we could see both of them interchange between the 10 and the 8 positions. So I've always been an advocate of Ten Hag knowing what he wants, seeing what he wants. Another issue I had with the deal was obviously the money involved, not just for the fact that it's a player in the last year of his contract from Chelsea, but also the fact that it's a player in it's an English player. There's all this English tax. I was expecting it to be done for less money because I expected Chelsea to have a fire sale. And there's an element of there's better value for money out there almost. But I think that like Brighton are in for Mohamed Kudus, who's a former Ten Hag player. But on the other hand, who knows, maybe Ten Hag's tired of continually going in for players he's worked with before and he wants a bit of variety.
Well, we're going to get to that towards the second half of this pod, players he's worked with before.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I understand what you're saying. I think there's Look, there's an element of risk with this signing, but I think there is an element of excitement as well. I think there's pros and cons to this signing. Like personally, Sean, who's in the comments, a Chelsea fan as well, like he can vouch for this. See some like I rated Mount when he was at Chelsea. I actually think if you look at a couple of the Chelsea players last season, I think as a group, as a collective, they had a bad season, but I don't think they're a bad batch of players. And I think Mason Mount is definitely one of them, especially if you look at the Champions League winning season. Under Thomas Tuchel, he was great. He was instrumental, like an instrumental part of that squad that won the Champions League. So, look, he's a good player. Look, I'm interested to see how him and Bruno work in midfield. I know we're going to chat about him and Eriksen and stuff like that later on, and different kind of combinations. But I'm interested to see how Ten Hag makes this work, or how fluid he is with his system, though, and stuff like that. But Jonathan, what are your, I suppose, immediate thoughts on the signing? Are you happy with it? Are you happy with the length of time it took? Talk to me.
Yeah, look, I'm just happy that it's finally done. But I really do think this is a deal that could have been done 3 weeks ago. Like, it's a player entering the last year of his contract. Chelsea were more or less willing sellers. United were keen buyers. The player wanted to move. United's initial bid and Chelsea's proposed fee weren't a million miles away. I think there was only something like 20 odd million in the difference. So the only frustrating thing about the whole situation is that it took this long to get it done. And, look, obviously it's done now, and the player in the next week or so will be in pre-season from day one with United, which is helpful for him. The only problem is that the way United operate, in the sense that they operate on a deal-by-deal basis, they don't seem to be able to work on multiple transfers at the same time. It kind of sets back that key hunt for a number 9 back a few weeks, whatever that may be. It looks like Højlund at this point, but that's the only frustrating part about this taking so long. In terms of Mount himself, I'm not going to lie, I've never been his biggest fan. I kind of looked at him at Chelsea and look at him for England, and I kind of scratch my head and think, what kind of player is he? What does he do? Is he a 10? Is he an 8? I thought that we would go back in for Frankie de Jong this summer, given the fact that we had Champions League football behind us this year, and last year we only had Europa League football, and we seemed very confident in getting him. But obviously the financial situation, I think, has dictated a lot of targeting this summer. I think United would have went all in for Caicedo if they had a bigger budget. But look, I mean, I'm happy with the deal. I think he will be a good player. We've got to trust Ten Hag's judgment. He's earned that right with the season he's had. I think, in fairness, with the signings that he's made, aside from Weghorst, he's been pretty on the money with every signing he's made. They've all worked out in one way or another. So, look, yeah, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he will be a good player. And like what Julio touched on there, he'll give us a tactical difference in matches. He can play out wide. He can play a false 9 role. He can play a 10. He can play an 8. So, look, excited that it's done. I think we all get excited by transfers. And, look, he's going to be a United player now, so 100% get behind him.
Yeah, look, 100%. I think that's the most important thing. That, look, you have the couple of weirdos on social media who will be like giving them abuse from day one. Look, we all know who. There's a lot of bot accounts and stuff on Twitter. You see a lot of people who are just like, they're ruthless from day one. But look, I think Mason Mount, for me, he's definitely going to give us something different in midfield than that we'd had previously. I think he gives us energy. I think like he can score goals. He gets himself about. I think he does that probably with more substance to what McTominay and Fred do. So, like, for example, if, like, let's say if Eriksen drops out of the team, you just bring in, like, Fred, I feel like, Mount will give us more than what he does. I feel like from a goal-scoring point of view, he's a better goal-scoring midfielder than Scott McTominay. That's not taking anything away from him. I actually think further forward, he's actually a decent player. But what I do think right now is he gives us another option. Like, if you looked towards the tail end of last season, Eriksen just... You could tell he was knackered, but he had to play because the options behind him weren't good enough. And what Mason Mount does give us now is an option to obviously change the midfield around to suit certain games. Like I'm seeing, obviously it's been thrown around recently that a midfield three of Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes, and Mason Mount could be a disaster off the ball. That could be the case. But like this is where I think even at some stages we have opportunities to be flexible in our midfield. We don't have to start that midfield every week. And I'm actually hopeful that, obviously budget dependent and stuff like that, and FFP things, that we get another midfielder in this summer. I think, look, if we can get someone else in, let's say if we can sell Scott McTominay or Fred, whichever one of them, and we get someone else in, I think automatically our midfield is strengthened. Now, well, that's if they bring in some of the quality. I think if they brought in Marcel Sabitzer, we wouldn't be strengthening too much. I think if we get someone else in, that'd be great. But look, he's a good signing. He seems like a good lad as well. And I think, look, that we have to have them type of people in the dressing room, that players who have good character. And again, I go back to that, like he's had a decent rise to obviously coming through at I can't pronounce the name of the team in Holland. You might be able to pronounce it for me. Vitesse, I think they're called, or something. And then he was with Derby, and then obviously Chelsea. So, like, look, his development has been good. He's come up through the ranks. He's experienced different types of football. And obviously, no disrespect to any of them three teams, Chelsea even included in this, but the pressure at Manchester United is different. And like, look, Sean could even say Chelsea fans are abusive online. United fans are probably 10 times worse. Like, United fans are demanding, and maybe sometimes a bit overly demanding sometimes, but I think, look, it's new pressure. He's going to have to adapt to Old Trafford. He's going to have to adapt to our fan base. But look, there's players there who he's familiar with, like the Rashfords, the Shaws, the Sanchos. So look, he's coming into some sort of familiar ground. So hopefully, he can adapt, in that regard.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day as well, Keane, you were talking about his development and stuff and the pressure. He's a Champions League winner at the end of the day. He's a Club World Cup winner. He's won more trophies than most of the players that are in that changing room at United at the moment. Do you know what I mean? So there's probably players in the United squad that could look to Mase Mount for a bit of inspiration and leadership. Like, he has got a hell of a lot of experience for a guy that's just 24 years of age. I actually thought he was a bit older. I couldn't believe it there a couple of weeks ago, and I actually found out he was still only 24, because he seems to be around at Chelsea for a long while now, since Frank Lampard's first spell in charge, and even before that he was on loan, like I said, at Vitesse and then at Derby County. So he seems to be on the road and playing football at a high level for quite a number of years now. So he's quite an experienced 24-year-old, and like you touched on as well, you can never have enough leadership in a change room, and that's something that United dressing room has lacked for far too long, is character. So aside from his footballing ability, I think his character alone could add a hell of a lot to that changing room. And I think that's what Ten Hag looks for, as well as footballing ability. You can see that this leadership and character is crucial for him as well.
Yeah, 110%. Julio, do you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, I think I want to touch upon something you said earlier, actually, regarding the risk behind this, because it's not just about the risk of whether the transfer works out. It's the risk for him, because Mason Mount had a very good rise, like you said, but the season just gone has been dreadful for a lot of Chelsea players. So I can't pin that all on him. Getting a move now. Yeah, but getting a move now to United, arguably the biggest club in the world, with all that pressure, there's just as much as it could be an improvement for him as if we could see that stagnate for him. We've seen players like Dele Alli's probably the best example of a decline. I'm not saying that will happen, but for Mason Mount, for the season he's just had, we've seen him come off social media a little bit, because as you can imagine what Twitter is like, people in our fan base claim to be fans, and we've seen the way they are. And I think that it's a worry. I'm with Jonathan that I've not always been his biggest fan, but I do like what he brings to the table in terms of he's a good player. He's a good player. He does good in whatever position he plays, even if it's a bit out of position, he'll do the work. He's got that versatility about him. And I think obviously Ten Hag likes that a lot about him. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I was going into the summer, I was thinking, if we were given the FFP and what was happening with our finances, if we walked away with a quality striker, a quality goalkeeper, and a quality 8 midfielder originally, then I would be happy with that window, because that's what you need now before you can start selling players and then replacing them. Like, I think that's why the Kim Min-jae deal fell through. I think that's why we've not been monitoring or pressing for a Casemiro wonder study, because it's like, let's prioritize the gaps we've got first before we can. Like, Scott McTominay has been played out of position as a Casemiro backup when he's not. He's better further up the pitch. So, before you can start looking to sell Fred and Casemiro, you need someone to fill their spot. Then preferring McTominay even, not Casemiro. I wouldn't want to sell him. But there's a lot at play here, and annoyingly, obviously, the Mount deal's gone through, which is good. I'm in agreement with this comment there. I've already said I trust whoever Ten Hag signs, so it will be interesting to see how it fares for Mount. I think he'll do well, but I worry for what happens elsewhere in the window, and if we'll get based on the finances, if we'll get the adequate players needed.
Yeah, look, the transfer situation is the budget thing is difficult because we're hearing different stories every day about how much we actually have. Then, like I seen a story the other day that we have 260 million to spend, but we can't spend all of it because of FFP. So it's like, it's weird. I think it's changing on the day, kind of where like what we have in the bank. I think what we have right now is actually a credit facility to spend. It actually isn't, cash. It's just the credit. It's like taking the company credit card out. That's what effectively what we're doing this summer. But look, hopefully with a couple of player sales, like if we can sell Dean Henderson, Scott McTominay, Harry Maguire, that would help massively in terms of towards FFP, especially the academy players. Even if you sell like Hannibal Medjugorje, that'll go a long way because obviously he's coming through the academy. That'll help towards FFP as well. So look, we'll see what happens with that one. But Jonathan, I want to come to you on the fit, I suppose, for like how he's going to fit into this team. Like, where do you think he lines up? Do you think it's in a 4-3-3 alongside Fernandes, Casemiro? Like, we've seen him play out wide as well. Where do you see Mason Mount's best position in this current United squad?
Yeah, it's a strange one. Like if Ten Hag does play that 4-3-3 formation with Casemiro sitting, you'd imagine he'll play that Eriksen role that we've seen him play this season, that kind of 10/8, that kind of, well, in Eriksen's case, tries to get up and down the field but can't anymore. He hasn't got the legs. Like when he first started out, Mason Mount was an absolute number 10. Saw him at Derby, and then that first season at Chelsea under Frank Lampard, he was just an out-and-out 10. But I think, in fairness to him, under Tuchel and that the last couple of seasons, you've seen him adapt more from that 10 role to a more kind of 8/ kind of winger role. So I think you might see him adopting that same sort of role at United. I think you look last year, why we chased De Jong for so long was that Ten Hag wanted that ball carrying midfielder, that dribbling midfielder that could take the ball from deep and bring it up the field, take the pressure up the field. And I think that's the role you're going to see Mount play under Ten Hag. Now, he might not play that role exclusively. I think there's going to be games where we see them play the 4-2-3-1. And you could see Mount play further up the field. Maybe not necessarily in that 10 position, but you could see him playing on the left, cutting in on the right. I think he's equally adept playing on the right. It'll be interesting to see how he uses him, but I do think he's going to play that Eriksen role because as effective as Eriksen was up until the World Cup last year, I think we really saw a drastic drop off in him in the second half of the season. And I thought when he came back from his injury, that he would be fresh and like lively in the last few games, but he was very poor. He was barely lasting 50 minutes in games, so that would have been a concern for Ten Hag. So the likes of Mount now will take massive pressure, I think, off Eriksen. If you have a player like Eriksen coming off the bench, then in the last 20 minutes of games, it makes a massive difference to how a manager can plan for certain fixtures.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think if you have Eriksen coming off the bench against a team where let's say we're struggling to break them down, and then all of a sudden Christian Eriksen comes on 20 minutes to go, like it gives us an extra dimension, to break a team down. I think especially look, one thing I like about Mount is he does shoot from long range. I think that's one thing that can help us as well. I think his goal scoring can definitely help. I think, look, the big thing about this for me is Ten Hag can't be naive with how he uses Mount either, though, because I think one thing we've seen last season, especially in big games away from home, he was playing Eriksen and Fernandes as a two in midfield and even Casemiro on his own. I think obviously in the bigger games, we need to be a bit more pragmatic in midfield. I know Mount can be that ball carrying midfielder, but if we're going away to Anfield or the Etihad, this is why exactly I want us to sign another midfielder who's probably a bit more defensively minded. So obviously we can be flexible with our system. I think if we're going away to the Etihad with like Casemiro, Fred, and let's say Mount or Fernandes, it's all right, but it's not going to, if we're on about progressing next season, this season, I think the massive thing about this is having the depth in midfield and strength in depth. Now, look, the budget I think is very limiting right now, though. I think that's the only thing we have here. I think we have to get the priority signings first. Look, I think goalkeeper and striker are going to be the two next signings. Look, I know we're going to talk about Onana in a few minutes, but I do think, look, we need to get them priority signings over the line and then get the sales done. And then, look, try get another midfielder in it. I don't think, like, people are talking about centre-back. I don't think centre-back is a necessity this season. I'll tell you why. Like, if we can keep Varane and Martinez fit, Lindelof is a very good backup for Varane, and he can play Luke Shaw as centre-back if needed. And Luke Shaw proved to be one of the best defenders in the league overall last season, not just at left-back, but when he played a centre-back, he was exceptional as well. So I think you can leave centre-back alone. I think we're stacked at full-back, and especially at left-back. I think Malacia and Shaw gives two different dynamics as full-backs. I think for this season, we could probably make do with Wan-Bissaka and Dalot. Even look, Ethan Laird is actually technically still at the club as well, depending on what they want to do with him. It's an option. I think, look, he's another academy player. We could sell him and make money as well, obviously help us towards the FFP thing as well. So, like, look, I think there's certain positions that need filling. I think, look, Mount, we needed number 8 anyway. Now, there's different styles, number 8s out there who do different types of things. But I think, look, he's a progressive player. He's a good player. And I just hope it works out, because I just know people are going to scrutinise every little thing he does. Look, it's the fact he's English. It's mad. Manchester United are an English club, based in England, based in Manchester. And our English players get more abuse than anybody else. It's the strangest dynamic online. I don't know what it is. Like, English players are specifically targeted. I don't know what it is, but like, it's absolutely nuts. But Julio, what would be your preferred pairing? If we're looking at all our options right now, Jonathan said maybe him beside Bruno. What about a dynamic of him and Christian Eriksen in the midfield?
It's a very good option to. The thing is, adding Mason Mount actually does, like we've all touched upon, offer something different. For example, there are games where you could potentially say to Bruno, "Listen, do you mind sitting out this one? It's only Charlton away in the cup. It's not." But Bruno Fernandes is bulletproof, and as I've touched upon multiple times on this channel, he doesn't not play when he's available. Now, long term, you can be fearful for that, but it's great to have now. Now, obviously, given the fact that Bruno offers so much going forward, my preference would have been to sign a Frenkie de Jong or even a Declan Rice to partner him in that midfield. Obviously, Rice has gone to Arsenal for a buttload of cash. Frenkie de Jong, we're not going in for him, even if we did have money. I think with all the things going on at Barcelona and how many of us are ready to get hurt again like last summer. But realistically, I think that we will see Bruno and Casemiro, and then we will see rotations, a lot of rotation or even utilization between Mount, Eriksen, and potentially one of Fred or McTominay, because there are rumours coming out now this evening that now the Mount is signed, someone might be going. Like, for example, Fred to Fulham. I don't think we'll get anywhere near that much because he's in the final year of his contract, and I think he's 29. Even though he's had his deal extended already by a year, I think that automatic 1-year extension has already been activated. So I think that if we sell Fred, we'll probably get about £12 million for him at most, and which is a horrible loss to take when you think about it, considering how much we signed him for. But I think we'll see a lot of. I think Ten Hag will stick with Mount a lot more than Eriksen because Mount offers a lot more intensity off the ball. But I think we will see a lot of utilization and a lot more rest for Eriksen throughout the season.
Yeah, look, I think it's the options he has are very good, and I think he can be very flexible with the system. Like, even let's say if we get 2 number 9s, he could play a diamond, in midfield if he wanted to. You could play maybe Bruno at the base of it, then you can have Eriksen and maybe even Eriksen as a 10 because he doesn't have the legs, and then Bruno and Mount as the other two, and then obviously Casemiro in between the two centre halves. You could do that, but we don't have two strikers. We don't even have one at the minute. That's wishful thinking. But he definitely gives us an option, and I'm interested to see how he gets on, because a lot of people I think right now are already writing him off before he's even kicked the ball. I think that's unfair. A lot of these same people wrote off Bruno under Ten Hag as well, and they said Bruno wouldn't adapt as Eric Ten Hag. So, look, I think people just need to be patient with him and just back the young fella, because look, at the end of the day, if we're going to sign a player, and we're talking about back the manager, then you have to back his signing. Like last year, I wasn't too sure about Casemiro, just simply because we've been burnt by Real Madrid and Bayern Munich for their 30-year-old players coming, Now look, consequently, Casemiro is absolutely unbelievable, probably our best player last season. But look, he is a good player, and he's a good lad, and let's just hope he does well. And hopefully it's not the last signing of our summer. Hopefully it's not like a summer 2018 where we signed 2 players and we haven't addressed areas that we don't need to address. Hopefully it's not like that again. But we're going to talk about another signing, lads. Potential signing, Andre Onana. I think a big debate and a big talking point in this channel, I think, for the last 2.5 years has been David De Gea should leave. Is David De Gea good enough to be Manchester United goalkeeper? Like we done literally a whole show on it there a few weeks ago, and look, we all know what most of our views are in regards to him being number one. But Julio, obviously, his contract is up. Well, tomorrow. Tomorrow's probably is the last day of the contract. Now we've seen Marwan Fellaini stay after the extension, and there's uproar with regards to that. But let's say in a scenario David De Gea leaves, and Andre Onana is probably the keeper at the minute who's most touted to join United. Do you think he's the appropriate choice for goalkeeper? And I suppose, is he, we haven't seen too much of him. I personally haven't anyway. I haven't seen enough of him to say, 100% he's his first choice. But I seen that Champions League final and he was different gravy. But would you be looking for him to come in, or do you have any other choices?
Firstly, I will say that a good point on it's good that you brought up the Fellaini point, because even at other clubs, we've seen instances like that. Like Brad Guzan had that Aston Villa about 10 or so years ago. His contract expired. Then an injury happened in the summer to one of the goalkeepers. So 2 weeks after he left, he was re-signed by Aston Villa. So, it's not over yet. Do you know what I mean? There's still ongoing situation where I think it's a case of, I do believe it's like, we'll give you a contract, but it's a lot less than what we were going to offer you before. And it's so much less than what you were earning before. So if he does leave, then, I'd thank him for his service. I don't like the whole hatred he's been getting on social media. You can't scroll 3 tweets without you can't scroll down 3 tweets without seeing a failed comp for him.
Can I be honest? It's funny that you say that. I see a comp of all the best goals scored in the Premier League, and he features in every single fucking one of them.
I know, it's crazy, honestly. Look, my point is, the point on De Gea is he's done really well for us. He came to us as a very skinny teenager. At the time, I remember being a little kid on Facebook saying £18 million waste of money after his debut. I ate my words a little bit, and then, over the years, he's done really well for us. But then he went to the World Cup. He never came back, and ever since then, we've seen the situation pan out before. Now he keeps getting a bit of luck where he keeps finding a way back in. So I think that you can thank him for his services, but the fact of the matter is, as much as I love the guy for what he's done whilst he's been with us, it's time to go. It's time to move on. I think the club have handled it poorly. I don't exactly know how they could have handled it a little bit better, but giving him the contract and they're going, actually, no, you know what, we're going to retract that. And now there's all this lastminute.com about contracts. It's a classic Manchester United boardroom move of just messing up somewhere when it could have been dealt with so much easier. Because I would have thought Ten Hag would have gone to the board in March and gone, this is what I want. This is what's going to happen. Who knows when that turning point was. Now, moving to the Onana situation, from what I know of him, we've all heard the controversy from his Ajax days, where I think that he was banned for doping for something. I think he tried to claim it was wife.
What's his fault? He took his wife's pills, didn't he, by accident or something?
Yeah, allegedly. That's what he's claiming. Do you know what I mean? I don't know anything about that, how that's going down. I remember Mamadou Sakho saying the same thing in 2016 when he was in the form of his life for Jurgen Klopp. So who knows? But I think that Onana, a lot of goalkeepers, it seems, would be an upgrade on De Gea because, do you know what I mean? It's almost like everyone's looking for he's better than De Gea because De Gea hasn't got what he's got, which is ability on the ball. However, my biggest worry with Onana is some of his ball playing is nuts to the point where whilst we almost laugh a bit at Neuer and Ederson playing midfield, Onana has that kind of mistake in him where I can see him trying to nutmeg Haaland in the derby, completely failing, and then Haaland scores a 40-yarder. Do you know what I mean? He's got a bit of that risk with it in him. So get your pacemakers ready, guys. That's all I'll suggest. But listen, given that he's worked with Ten Hag before, and I don't believe the fallout was with Ten Hag, it was more with the Ajax board. I think that if Ten Hag trusts this guy and he knows what he's all about, then you could argue that there's more. It's arguably that it's less of a risk than Diogo Costa or even David Raya. Now, the reason I bring up Raya is because I don't know what's happening with him, but I believe Brentford are asking for big money even in the final year of his contract. So that's a deal I wouldn't even touch unless it's late parts of the window and they're trying to ship him off because they've effectively, I think, already replaced him this summer. And then you got Diogo Costa, who people are raving about. It's almost similar to the Ederson transfer at City, where a goalkeeper, up and coming, modern goalkeeper from the Portuguese league. I haven't watched enough about him. All I've seen is clips on YouTube, but clips on YouTube, I've always said, like Damien Duff, as good as a player as he was.
Whoa. Don't even go there. Hang on.
Let me finish. As good as a player he was, the highlight reels would tell you he was the greatest player of all time. He was a good player, but my point is, highlight reels, you know, I could make the same case about other players like Shane Long, for example. So who knows? The point is,
what's this thinking of all the Irish players here today? What's going on with that?
Because
You're a brave man, Julio. I accidentally
keep stepping on Keane's toes about this kind of thing, so I thought I might as well put it in the open.
Next minute, you say Evan Ferguson is shit now as well.
No, you know I back Evan Ferguson. You know I want him in the theatre of dreams. But fact of the matter is, I think Onana's probably the he's obviously the favourite right now, and I think for the kind of money Inter are asking for, because Inter are always in some kind of debt, so I think value for money wise, you could be getting a good deal there. It just depends whether the club can actually do that, or if we're going to see, I think what Ed Woodward did with Fred was he got asked, I think 30, 40 million maybe, but he just slapped 50 million on the table and Shakhtar accepted. So I hope we don't see some kind of ridiculous overpayment like that.
Yeah, look, hopefully thank fuck Ed Woodward's not negotiating transfers anymore. That man isn't seeing heaven. I'm telling you that now, he isn't. Ed Woodward is not. Him and Matt Judge are not seeing heaven. That's the nicest thing I can say about the two of them lads. But yeah, look, Onana for me, from what I've seen of him, he looks like a competent goalkeeper. Like, he takes risks, but he shows personality, and I think that's what you need in the goalkeeper. I know was it Brian shared a video on Twitter the other day on about Fabian Barthez and how he used to do shit that Onana's doing. So yeah, look, like you said, Julio, if he's in the Manchester derby at Old Trafford trying to nutmeg Haaland from the halfway line, so be it. Like, look, at least he's not like David De Gea where you sit on the 6-yard line when a cross is coming in. But on that, Jonathan, Onana, obviously he's been highly touted Would you worry that, again, the pressure of Manchester United? Do you think, even with that big personality and like you said, he takes risks? Do you think, the agenda the English media are going to portray the minute he signs? We've seen Schmeichel leave. A load of goalkeepers couldn't succeed him for ages until we got Van der Sar. Van der Sar came in. De Gea struggled early on. Do you think he has the physique and the personality to come in and seamlessly come in and replace that with De Gea? Because I think, look, whatever you say about his last couple of years, he was at one time a good goalkeeper.
Yeah, we touched on earlier on, didn't we, with the extra pressure on Manchester United players in general, and I think that ramps up another couple of degrees when you're talking about Manchester United goalkeepers. I mean, you look at the gap there between Schmeichel and when we eventually got Van der Sar, we had some absolute awful goalkeepers in between that period. But the English media will target United players anyway, but the goalies always get it a little bit extra hard. I mean, I remember when De Gea first signed and he was skinny and gangly. I don't think any of us ever thought he was going to make it at United, but he did. He worked on his weaknesses and he did become a decent goalkeeper. But I think, I don't know enough about Onana as a player. I don't watch a lot of him, but he looks like a kind of a cocky, arrogant kind of goalkeeper. He makes his decisions, and look, if it ends up in a mistake, it's that whole risk-reward balance, and if you're going to play that way that Ten Hag wants to play, with a sweeper keeper, a keeper that can play out from the back, there's going to be instances where he's going to make mistakes, and he has to be strong enough to deal with that. I mean, you see Ederson and Alisson are probably two of the best goalkeepers in the world at doing it. They're 90% of the time they're on the money, but they do have some clangers in there as well. Like Ederson was caught early in the Manchester derby this season, and Rashford rounded him, and he just narrowed the angle a little bit too much. But other than that, Rashford would have scored, and it would have been all over the headlines of the clanger that Ederson made. But look, that's just part of the whole risk-reward mentality when you're playing with a goalkeeper out from the back. So I think he looks physically big enough to play in the Premier League. I don't know how tall he is, but certainly physically he looks up to it. He's not a young man. He's 27, I think. I know it's young as far as goalkeepers go, but he's experienced enough. He's played international football. The thing that baffles me most about this is if this is a sort of goalkeeper that Ten Hag wanted, why didn't he sign him last summer on a free transfer? He was available on a free transfer last year. I understand there was the controversy there with the drug thing or whatever it was, but I mean, it was obviously the sort of profile he was looking for, and now we're looking at paying maybe 50 or 60 million euro, and we could have had him on a free 12 months ago. Look, maybe it was a case he wanted to come in and see what De Gea had to offer in person, but I think there was enough data, enough matches on file there for Ten Hag to look and see that De Gea wasn't the sort of goalkeeper that was going to be there long term for Ten Hag.
Yeah, look, it's I think the goalkeeping position definitely could have been addressed. Obviously last summer, but I think, look, again, the budget was a bit of a. It was a bit of a weird one, because I think you need to address midfield. A centre back was definitely a massive one. And look, again, we financial issues last season with the cash flow. And obviously I think that didn't help. But yeah, look, it's definitely a key position that needs to be addressed. I've been saying on this channel for 2 years that David De Gea it's 3 years now, actually. I keep forgetting how long I'm actually doing this. It's crazy. But I've been saying the last 3 years he needs to be replaced, because football's just evolved. You can't just be a shot stopper or quote unquote shot stopper. You need to have a bit more to your game. And I think that at David De Gea's age, what's he now, 30, 31, you can't develop that stuff in your game. What maybe you can come out for a cross. Maybe he can learn how to do that, but in terms of sweeping, being good technically in the ball, he's not going to develop that game at that part of his game at that age. So look, I think it's time for him to move on. I think, look, obviously the ideal scenario for me would have been announce his departure the day he got the Golden Glove. Say, congratulations, thanks for your service. When he got awarded that at Old Trafford and he got the ovation, I think that would have been great. Right, he's leaving this summer. Let's give him his testimonial in the summer. And then, that would have been great. That would have been grand. I don't agree with the way they've kind of offered the contract and pulled the contract. If Ten Hag obviously wants him to go, right? That's clear, because he didn't authorize the contract in the first place. So, like, at the end of the day, the club obviously went above the manager's head, offering him that contract. The manager said, no, fuck off. Like, I don't want the player. And then now it's gone to a point where the manager is refusing to sign off. Tom Heaton is obviously, today a report came out saying that Tom Heaton is going to, like, had an offer to go to Luton as Luton's number one. United said no. So obviously, if United are saying no to number two, we'll say technically last season he was our number three because he was out injured and then we got Butland. If they're saying no to the number three, then obviously the number two is up. There's going to be one of the keepers leaving because Dean Henderson is coming back. So why in God's name would United not leave Tom Heaton go? If we're talking about money and struggling for wages and all this type of crack, why are we not leaving him go? So there's obviously De Gea or Dean Henderson. One of them is leaving. I'd say most likely David De Gea at this point. Now, not unless, like I said in Twitter earlier, United pull a fast one on us all. And on the day his contract is dead, contract is done, and they announce their renewal. But Julio, you wanted to come in on something there regards to David De Gea.
Yeah, I did. It was actually regarding the boardroom situation, because I think that when you look at, I genuinely think that what we're hearing regarding transfer budget, it could be a case where John Murtaugh's upstairs, like with one arm tied behind his back, going, how are we going to allocate this money? Because we need 3 players to come in immediately before we can start selling players and then replacing them. So it could be a scenario where they were contemplating keeping De Gea because, like, we won't have the money for a goalkeeper. If we bring a midfielder and a striker, we'll be fine. So what I'm saying is that there could be a case where they don't know what they're doing. That's why everything's taking so long. They don't know whether they're coming or they're going because they don't know what money they can use. And that's not even considering what's going on with the takeover situation. We all know that Richard Arnold and John Murtaugh and Darren Fletcher would have preferred some kind of clarity to have already been done by now, so they know what to work with. So, I just simply wanted to come in with the fact that we could be seeing a lot of incompetence this summer. I don't think it will end there, because it could be a case where they're thinking, how do we allocate this apparent budget of somewhere in the region of 100 and 150 million pounds? 60, including add-ons, has just gone to Mason Mount. We've opened up
including the 5 million add-ons, and that 5 million I just seen there is dependent on if United win a trophy. So, like,
who knows?
That extra 5 million becomes worth it if that's the case.
Yeah, exactly. Like, obviously, if we're going to go in for Onana, then the sales of the likes of Dean Henderson would be good. The Tom Heaton thing, I think, came about because I think Ten Hag was going, you're literally the only goalkeeper I have right now. Henderson's out the door. De Gea is literally 1 foot out the door now. So you're all I've got right now. For 1st of July, when preseason starts, you're all I've got. So I need you around right now, because there's a scenario where I only bring in 1 goalkeeper. So there's a lot going on probably behind the scenes that even we don't know about, and a lot of frailties that we could blame the board for. We could end up blaming the Glazers for. Who knows? So, I mean, the FFP
as well. On that goalkeepers, you made a great point. Like Tom Heaton right now, because Henderson's actually still injured, and Dean Henderson is still injured. He arrived at Carrington today as part of his recovery. Same with Lisandro Martinez as well. Like, both of them arrived at Carrington to continue their recovery. So the goalkeeping situation is an interesting one, because there's so many different scenarios. De Gea goes, Henderson, like, let's say if we don't have the funds, and let's say for all intents and purposes, Ten Hag might turn around and say, I need that number 9. Right? Let's say he turns around and says, fuck it, I need number 9. Henderson could stay with Tom Heaton as number 1, number 2. Then you have a scenario where you buy Onana, and then all of a sudden we're reliant on player sales to get the striker. And then we've probably the worst scenario, with all due respect again, is David De Gea staying. And then, look, we've seen the mistakes he's made. He's not going to get better at his age. I think that's the probably worst case scenario. So, look, it's a strange one, and it's a tough one. And again, it's mad. We have the money, we have the credit facility there, but because of the financial fair play restrictions, we need a couple of players sold before we can spend all of our budget, which is, it's it's crazy, but I'm not clued up in this financial world to fully explain it. But it's just I've never seen a club be so awkward in the market. Like, I look at Chelsea right now, and I'm looking at what they're doing, selling all these players, selling the academy graduates, and then being able to spend the money. And whatever people say about Todd Bowley, he's after working away around the market, and he is a shrewd businessman. And look, when a new owner comes in, there's always a lot of movement within the club. They want to put in their own structure, their own manager. I personally disagree with them sacking Tuchel. But now Pochettino's come in, they're going to put a structure around him. They're going to do well. But look, I think we just have to rely on these player sales and hope they go well. But when's the last time, apart from Daniel James a couple of years ago, when's the last time we actually sold a player for a decent fee? Like
Daley Blind, Chris Smalling, but by minimal amounts of money. I'm talking a couple of million here and there, I think, just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So not great. I think the constant failures that we've had over the last few years, and then the Glazers going, right, well, we'll spend big money to get back in the Champions League. A lot of that has hurt.
And they're short. Do you know what they do with that, Julio, as well? They're short-term signings to get us back into the Champions League as well.
So we'll have to reinvest again. And that's not even considering the fact that we'll get a manager, we've signed his players, within 2 years, the manager's gone, and then a further year or two after, the players are gone afterwards. Like, how many times, like Louis van Gaal signed his players in his second transfer window, Schweinsteiger, Schneiderlin, Memphis Depay. Within a year and a half of them signing, they were gone. Jose Mourinho left. Within 6 months of him going, Lukaku and Sanchez were out the door. That's just examples quickly in my head. Mkhitaryan left a year and a half after he joined. So there's been a lot of flops and a lot of players that have gone. Di Maria left a year at about 15, 20 million pound loss. So we can talk about the short-term fixes, but then the players we've signed for long-term success, we've seen leave almost immediately. So, and a lot of them look back on that year and a half, they'll be like, I didn't do as well as I want. Schneiderlin, Memphis, all coming out saying I didn't do as well as I'd want there. You could put the United pressure on that. You could put on the manager changes, all sorts. Some remember it fondly, some don't, with the experience of being at Old Trafford. The fact of the matter is, there's been a lot of hurting, a lot of incompetence in the last 10 years, and it's really biting us in the ass right now.
Yeah, look, the way this club has been run in terms of transfers, it's finally bit us in the arse. And especially like we've had years outside of the Champions League, we've had years where we haven't won the Premier League. And effectively, I've been saying this for forever. Eventually, as big as we are, it catches up. Now, luckily, fingers crossed, the sale does go through this summer. Now it's increasingly looking like it's going to be Qatar. Now, whatever your feelings are about that, look, we have a whole show to discuss that when that situation happens. But we just need this. We need the sale to happen, and then get the debt cleared. I think the debt and the transfer debt that we have, overall, it's killing us right now. And if we can have a debt-free Man United, no matter who the owner is, we can operate a lot more swiftly. And look, whoever the new owner is, hopefully we get football and people in these different areas of the club, and then we can operate like a proper football club. Like, I hate mentioning them because number one, they're a shit club. Well, not the shit club. They're brilliant. They're a brilliant football team, but like they have no support and everything they do is hollow. But Manchester City, you look at the way they run across the road.
You mean Wigan Athletic with a lot of money?
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, if you look at the way they're run in terms, you look what they had in place before Pep Guardiola even came to the club. They had all the people, they had the connections, they had the network ready for him to come in and recruit the right players to play the football he wanted. That's what Manchester United needs to be doing with Eric Ten Hag. Obviously, we have owners in place who don't give a shit, and that's not something we can control right now until whoever takes over as Ratcliffe, Qatar, or whoever they could be a last minute bidder, who knows. But we do need that. And I think, look, it's whatever we say about managers we've had, players we've had, ultimately the people who are responsible for this mess that's happened in the last 10 years is the Glazers. And you have rival fans saying, but the Glazers spent 1 billion, but they've also taken 1.5 out. They've also haven't updated the training ground. They also haven't updated the stadium. The women's team had to drive 10 minutes away from the training ground to go fucking toilet. Do you know what I mean? And then you have Avram and Joe Glazer coming over to the women's FA Cup final and spending 250 grand on the club's books, by the way, on a fucking private jet. So they are scumbags of the highest order. And the sooner they leave my football club, the better. They're absolute scum of the earth. Can't stand them. And it's funny now, there's anti-Glazer legislation out there right now. So no clubs can do leverage buyouts anymore. And they can't do what the Glazers done. It's funny, the FA and the Premier League acted 20 years too late on that one. But that's all I'll say about that. But final one before we wrap up, lads. Transfer fee on Mason Mount. I'm going to get you both to make a prediction right now. Will he be good value for money at the end of the season? When we wrap up and we do a season review at the end, when we talk about the transfers we made this summer, do you ultimately turn around and think the conversation we're going to have, are we going to say Mason Mount was worth every penny? Jonathan, I'll come to you first.
Well, when I first heard we were officially properly linked with him and it became obvious he was a target, I was saying to friends that I wouldn't be paying more than 40 million for a player like that with less than a year left on his contract. But I also am naive. I understand the way the transfer window works. We're not living in a world of 10 years ago now where fees are reasonable. I mean, if you buy a player, if you're a top level football club and you're buying a player for less than 20 or 25 million pounds these days, you're doing really, really well. So in the grander scheme of things, for an English player with an English tax, he's only 24. He has almost 40 England caps to his name. He's won a Champions League. I think he's won a Club World Cup as well with Chelsea. For 55 million quid, I think it's decent enough business in this day and age. Time will tell. But when you look at the fee that Declan Rice is going for, I think it could rise to 105, 110 million. Declan Rice only has 2 years left on his contract. So, I mean, that's an awful lot of money for him as well. Like, if he had stayed loyal to Ireland, like Arsenal probably would have been paying about 45, 50 million max for him. Yeah. So I do think, in fairness, this time next year we'll be looking back at the season. I think we'll say that Mason Mount was a decent bit of business. Yeah.
Do you agree, Julio?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that how you look at the Mason Mount transfer is very contextually dependent. If you look at what £60 million gets you in this day and age for an English player as well, it's not bad. And given what he offers what he brings to the table, I think he'll be a good player, a good transfer. My issue with it is the context behind the transfer. It was a player who wanted to leave. It was from a team who were in desperate need to sell players because they had about 355 players in their squad. And then it was a player in the last year of his contract. I'm not being funny, but £60 million, I think, is a good value for money transfer if he had 2-3 years left on his contract for what he actually is. So I think it'll be a good bit of business when you look at it from the player and what you're getting. But in terms of the context behind the transfer, I think that United have overpaid a tiny bit.
Yeah, I think last year the contract, like you said, I think if he had like another year left, 2 years left in the deal, then maybe I'd be turning around saying, yeah, it's a decent deal. I still think he's a good player. I think the price, look, you've Man United tax and you've also English tax. And then, Chelsea are a direct rival as well, so like that also adds to it. So look, at least I look at it this way, at least when Chelsea started off with 80 million, we paid 80 million for Harry Maguire, and what's he having left on his deal then? Was that a year or 2 years he'd left as well? So look, the transfer market is just inflated as fuck anyway, because like you've seen the amount of deals that have gone through recently. Like we sold Daniel James to Leeds for 30 million. In no way, shape, or form is Daniel James worth 30 million. I love him. He's a great guy, great attitude, great work rate. No way in God's green earth is he a £30 million player? And he's not even playing for Leeds, or even when he went on loan to Fulham, he wasn't starting there either. You know, the market value is just it's crazy. Like if we bought Bruno Fernandes now, we would not be buying him for 47 million. Imagine we tried to, and Bruno was actually in the last year of his deal when we bought him as well. You know, he was coming up to the last year in his deal. So yeah, the inflation right now, cost of living, even Manchester United are affected by that. So like, look, it's just one of them. But on that note, guys, we will wrap it up. Thanks very much everyone who did join in today and who will also join in on the replay. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe as well. We're going to have a lot more videos coming out now in the next couple of weeks. Pre-season training will be starting next week, and United are playing every few days in July. So look, we'll be covering the matches pre and post match. Gonna be a bit different because we're playing in America, so the post match reactions might actually be happening the following morning after the game, rather than at 3 or 4 in the morning. And for 2 of them matches, I'm gonna be in Lisbon, and I'm probably gonna be pissed. So I'm not gonna be on anyway. Mark Biggs will have to look after that. But in August for the United game in Dublin, we have a special collaboration coming up in August. So Jonathan, if you're going to the game, or any Irish lads who will be to watch the channel, you can come meet us in Dublin on the 6th of August. We will announce that further going forward. But hopefully everyone has a good evening. Hopefully Onana news, positive Onana news can come out in the next couple of days, and we have a new goalkeeper as well. And look, let's hope Man United can find some coins at the end of the mattress, and we can buy a striker as well. But until then, guys, thanks very much, and we'll see you later.